Welcome back everyone for another in my aviation history series of videos. Now, as I'm sure you can guess from the content of my videos, I spend a lot of my free time online reading about or looking at pictures of airplanes, specifically the World War II era. And if you've ever done the same, I am sure you would have come across a picture of a World War II bomber that looks like it was painted by a child who was jacked up on sugar. Something like a white B-17 covered in blue polka dots, or a B-24 painted in rainbow-esque stripes. But this isn't from the mind of a 6-year-old who got a hold of a box of crayons. These were real airplanes that flew in World War II, and they had a purpose, and that is the topic of today's video. But before we get into that, as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. And just before we get into the video, something I should have been doing a lot more up till now, and that is just asking you guys out there, if you enjoy what you're looking at, if you like what I'm doing, go down below, click on the like page, subscribe to my channel, and by all means, please click on that little notification bell. If that way you guys get alerted when I do get more new content up. I usually try to do the What's on My Desk monthly update beginning of the month. And I usually try to get a video or a series of videos released by the 15th, the middle of the month. So whether that's going to be a tips and tricks video, or an aviation history video, or my time-lapse videos of the previous model builds that I've got done, or an air show video, or some of my new product review videos I'll be doing. So I'm going to try to get something posted by the middle of the month. So please, if you're enjoying this, subscribe, like, and click that notification bell. Let's move on to the video. Now, before we can get into the details about these planes, we need to go back and look at the why of these planes. And for that, we will go back to roughly 1943 England. The 8th Air Force was really starting to ramp up operations in late 1943. And as new units came online, the number of aircraft that were flying on a single mission quickly started to increase. With missions of 100 to 200 normal early in the year, by November of 1943, the 8th Air Force was able to get upwards of 500 aircraft into the air for a single mission. Now, the act of getting these aircraft into the air and formed up by squadron, then by wing, and then into a coherent bomber stream in order to proceed to the target, as well as provide the proper self-defense. It was no easy feat. The plan called for planes to take off at set intervals, fly at a designated speed, climb at a designated rate, and fly to a predetermined flight path, usually climbing through clouds to a specific altitude where the units could then form up on one another. This was before turning towards the Channel and heading to Europe at a set time. Now, this would ensure that all the squadrons were stacked in the right orientation and were placed at the right position in the bomber stream. Now, as I'm sure you can see, there are many spots in this plan where it can go wrong, and it did more times than it should. Now, the most common issue was aircraft forming up with the wrong squadron, or a unit heading towards the target either too soon or too late. Now, this may seem like a minor issue, but the layout of the squadron and their placement in the larger formation was key to ensuring a proper self-defense, and any changes to that plan could leave an aircraft or even an entire squadron vulnerable to fighter attack. More significantly, many aircraft collided while attempting to form up in cloud, bad weather, and icing conditions. The use of radio beacons started to be used to ensure units stayed within their designated areas, but it was still not an easy task. With hundreds of planes in the air over a relatively small area of East Anglia, mistakes would happen, and there's just no way you could stop that. Now, it was the need to minimize these mistakes that brought about these brightly colored bombers, officially known as assembly ships. These were war-weary aircraft that were not suitable for combat operations, but were still technically airworthy. Each unit would be provided with one, and each unit came up with its own unique, highly visible scheme to ensure it was easy to see in flight. These would be flown by experienced pilots who were experts at flying the assembly pattern, and the crew would include usually a radio operator and a number of spotters who would use flares to guide the other bombers into their proper place in the formation. Now, once the formations were complete, the assembly ships would break off and return to their base, leaving the bombers to head off on their deadly missions over the continent. These assembly ships, for the most part, seem to be mostly made up of B-24s, but there are a number of B-17s that you can find if you look hard enough. Now, there are not many color photos of these birds, but luckily there are many accounts of them by different members of the units, so a good approximation via profiles can be accomplished. Now, here are a few that I have been able to find while looking around the web. So I'll start with the B-17s, as there doesn't seem to be as many and only 2 documented B-17 assembly ships that I can find. Now, I'm not sure why there are so few B-17s. I would assume the need for an assembly ship would be the same regardless of type of aircraft flown, but either way, there are significantly more B-24s than B-17s documented. So the first aircraft that I will go over is easily the more interesting of the two, and the one that has the least amount of historical controversy, and that is the so-called Spotted Cow. It's officially B-17F serial 423441. It began life as Patches 2 and was flown by the 547th Bomb Squadron in the 384th Bomb Group out of Grafton, Underwood. It was the longest serving B-17 in the unit, having survived 39 missions before being retired and converted into the assembly and weather ship. It was with the unit for 777 days before being officially retired. Now, I can only find one picture of the plane while it was used in combat, and here she is. It's the middle aircraft in this picture. Now, once turned into an assembly ship, it was painted in an eye-catching paint scheme of overall white with blue polka dots. The other B-17 that I have found has a bit of a controversy about it with regards to its colors. Now, it is aircraft B-17E 419100 and was one of the original B-17s to come over to England. It was named Birmingham Blitzkreig and participated in the very first 8th Air Force bombing mission on October 17, 1942 with the 414th Bomb Squadron, part of the 97th Bomb Group. It was transferred to the 92nd Bomb Group on October 24th of 1942 and was used to train new crews coming to Europe. It was then transferred to the 525th Bomb Squadron with the 379th Bomb Group, but I don't have a date for that transfer. The 379th first mission was May of 1943, so I would assume sometime around there. Now, it still carried its original name and nose artwork and was used as a personal hack aircraft by the squadron commander. Now, it was later painted with white stripes and used as an assembly ship, although my research states that it was only used a few times for assembly purposes. Now, here is where the controversy starts. Many pictures and sources online state that it was red with white stripes. Many of the first-person accounts I can find online state that it was overall olive drab with white stripes, and I tend to concur with that due to the one detail I managed to find. Now, in many of the renderings, it shows an olive drab square around the tail markings with the red and white striping stopping short, while in this period shot, you can clearly see that the so-called red area perfectly matches the olive drab area, and there's no evidence of a color change. This leads me to believe that it was strictly olive drab with white stripes. Now, either way, it's an interesting plane to have, must have been an interesting plane to have seen in person. So now we can move on to the B-24s. So first up is B-24D 4240127, First Seargent. It started life in early of 1943 with the 329th Bomb Squadron, 93rd Bomb Group, named There She Blows. Again, maybe. Aircraft 4240127 was for sure a Palesti veteran, and she flew 17 missions in the Mediterranean theater, including a mission to Rome. There's documentary evidence that it was named Thar She Blows Again, but there was other photographic evidence that said she wasn't. And there is rumors that she was named Bucket of Bolts, but no real proof. But I am not going to get into any of this, historic muddiness here. Either way, the aircraft was deemed obsolete as newer model B-24s arrived, and she was transferred to the 458th Bomb Group in early 1944 and used as an assembly ship. The nose was painted white, keeping the bomb markings visible, and the entire aircraft was painted in red and blue polka dots on the white area and on the nose, and red and yellow on the rear fuselage. So here you can see a colorized photo of what she would have looked like. Now, on May 27th of 1944, the aircraft was being prepared for a flight when a Very pistol, or a flare gun, discharged, and a number of other flares were ignited, and the aircraft burned to the ground. This was a sad end for sure for such a significant airframe. So next up we have B-24H 4128697, the Spotted Ass Ape. This aircraft started life as Dixie Belle II, flying with the 754th Bomb Squadron 458th Bomb Group, and flew 8 missions over Europe before being pulled from service and turned into an assembly ship to replace first Seargent, which, as we just saw, burned on the ground. I can't find any particular reason why it was pulled from service after only 8 missions, but records on the 458th Bomb Group's website show it only flew 1 mission between March 26th and May 4th, which was on April 29th. So there is a chance it had suffered some sort of damage and may have been the quote-unquote worst of the active B-24s at the time. So once it was pulled from service, all the weapons were removed, and it was painted in a similar scheme to First Seargent with a few minor changes. By this time, the 8th Air Force had adopted a color-coded system to identify bomber units, and so this aircraft carried the red and white stripes of the 458th Bomb Group on the tail. It also carried a shark mouth on the nose, something that is surprisingly common on B-24s just due to the way the nose structure, nose windows look. So surprisingly, as you're seeing, there is lots of pictures of this aircraft, including some original color shots that helps understand the paint schemes. There was also one other minor change on the fuselage where the Air Force stars and bars are located. A red circle with a white and black bar was painted on it, and this was lit up with lights to help visibility in the dark early mornings or during bad weather when the formations would be forming up. So it went on to fly 70 assembly missions, including a few scrubbed missions, before coming to a sad end. On March 9th, 1945, the aircraft had a hard landing and the right gear collapsed and the aircraft skidded off the runway. It was damaged beyond repair and was written off. Now after this, no other aircraft in the 458th Bomb Group was painted as an assembly ship, and for most of the rest of the war, the formations would have just assembled without any type of assembly ship. So next up is B-24D 4124109 Silver Streak. It started life in 1943 as ready and willing with the 330th Bomb Squadron 93rd Bomb Group. This aircraft flew numerous combat missions with the 330th Bomb Squadron, including the raid on Palesti. And while I can't not find any documentary evidence, pictorial evidence shows roughly 45 combat missions. After its use with the 93rd Bomb Group, it was transferred to the 466th Bomb Group and was stripped of paint and began life as an assembly ship. It was eventually painted in a red zigzag lightning bolt type lines, and it earned the name Silver Streak. Now, I can't find any record of the fate of this aircraft, but it most likely was scrapped around the end of the war. Now, one notable event was on August 18th, 1944, when she was the lead in a group of B-24s who flew Glenn Miller and their band to and from a concert for 8th Air Force bomber crews. Next up, we have B-24D 4123667 Barber Bob. It began life with the 330th Bomb Squadron 93rd Bomb Group, named Ball of Fire, and flew many missions, including the raid on Palesti. Now again, I am unable to find any firm evidence on the number of missions flown, but I would assume it is similar to the previous B-24Ds above that flew with the 93rd. Of note, this aircraft is credited with the first air-to-air kill for the 8th Air Force, when the waist gunner shot down a Focke-Wulf 190 on October 9th, 1942. Now again, I also can't find any hard dates for when she was turned into an assembly ship, but again, based on the aircraft I have already talked about, I would assume sometime late 1943, early 1944, when these early D models were phased out of combat. So it was stripped of all of its painted markings and was painted in an alternating scheme, apparently, of white, blue, and red stripes, similar to a barber pole, hence the name Barber Bob. Now, there's no color photo out there on the web that looks original. The only one I could find that looks colorized, and it shows white, red, and yellow stripes. But like I said, I think it's a colorized shot, as it looks very close to another black and white picture that I have found. So this aircraft was condemned on May 5th of 1945 and scrapped. Now, the 93rd used another B-24D, 4272869, named at various times You Name It Peg and Bear Down, as an assembly ship after Barber Bob was scrapped, but the only picture I can find of it shows a relatively bare scheme of what looks like yellow panels over the war-weary olive drab paint. So next up we have B-24H 427552 Lil Cookie. This aircraft began life with the 579th Bomb Squadron 392nd Bomb Group in September 1943, and it looks like it flew one mission before being transferred to the 44th Bomb Group in October of 1943. With the 4th Bomb Group, it was named Lil Cookie and flew a number of combat missions, but I cannot find a firm answer to how many. At some point, it was transferred to the 489th Bomb Group as a war-weary airframe and was converted into an assembly ship. It had 12-inch yellow circles painted over the entire airframe, and the tail turret was faired over. There were lights installed in that faired over tail turret in order to aid visibility during darkness and bad weather. Now, I can find no information about the fate of this aircraft, but again, it was more than likely scrapped at the end of the war. So next up we have one of the most colorful assembly ships out there, B-24D 4240772, the Little Gramper. Yet another B-24D assembly ship that was an old Palesti Raider. This aircraft started life with the 564th Bomb Squadron 389th Bomb Group and flew multiple combat missions, at least 16 as far as I can tell, including the raid on Palesti. At some point, it was declared war-weary and was transferred to the 491st Bomb Group, where it was converted into an assembly ship. It had all the weapons removed and was painted overall yellow with red dots and red trim around the nose and engines. Now, unfortunately, it was so worn out that after only a few months, it failed an inspection and it was scrapped in September of 1945 before being replaced by 4440165 Rage in Heaven, which also didn't last long, crashing on takeoff on January 5th, 1945 in a snowstorm. A second B-24 crashed shortly after due to the weather, and that mission was ultimately scrubbed. Now, this aircraft had white and green bands painted on the wings and fuselage. Now, the final assembly ship for the 491st was B-24J 4440101 Tubarao. This again was a combat veteran with at least 20 missions before it was taken off operations and painted up with green and yellow stripes and used as an assembly ship. It kept the original nose art and name. Now, it was written off in a ground accident and scrapped, although I cannot find a firm date for when that happened. Our next plane is B-24D Lemon Drop. This was delivered to the 68th Bomb Squadron of the 44th Bomb Group and flew, based on nose markings, at least 25 missions, including the raid on Palesti. There are another 20 mission markings lower down, but these may signify assembly missions and not actual combat missions. So there's just not a lot of information out there on the history of some of these airplanes. In late 1943, the aircraft was retired from combat missions and painted in the yellow striped scheme you see here and used as the 44th Bomb Group assembly ship. It was scrapped in June of 1945 after the hostilities ended. Next up, B-24D 4123809, you can't miss it. A play on the way the word can't is pronounced in England. So it began life as hell's a droppin' two with the 329th Bomb Squadron 93rd Bomb Group. It is hard to get a good look at it, but there is clearly a large number of mission markings on the nose. This aircraft was painted up in an eye-catching scheme of overall black and yellow checkerboards with the large wings eye painted on the tail. In June of 1944, this aircraft was replaced by 4263981 named Striped Ape and was flown until February of 1945 when it was scrapped. Now, I can't find any pictures of this aircraft or confirm what the paint scheme looked like. There are, however, pictures of its replacement aircraft, B-24H-4129489, and named Striped Ape II. The paint was burgundy stripes with a black border over the natural metal. Now, it is possible that the original Striped Ape had a similar scheme, but it's impossible to tell. Both of these aircraft flew a number of combat missions before being turned into assembly ships. Next up, B-24D 4124215 Dogpatch Raider. It started life with the 409th Bomb Squadron, 93rd Bomb Group, and flew a number of missions, including, yet again, the raid on Palesti. It was declared war-weary on the fall of 1943 and transferred to the 445th Bomb Group to be an assembly ship and renamed Dogpatch Raider. Of note, the large white F on the fuselage was lit to aid forming up in low visibility conditions. Next is B-24D 4123738 Wham Bam. It started life with the 330th Bomb Squadron, 93rd Bomb Group, and flew at least 40 combat missions before being declared war-weary. It was then transferred to the 453rd Bomb Group and used as an assembly ship painted in yellow checker boxes over the base olive drab paint. Now, it was involved in a ground accident on June 1st, 1944, but was repaired, later being involved in a midair on May 11th, 1945, and was later scrapped due to severe damage on the tail. Next is B-24D 4240370 Pete the Palm Inspector. It was delivered to the 506 Bomb Squadron, 44th Bomb Group in 1943, named Heaven Can Wait, and was scheduled to take part in the Palesti raid. Now, it aborted its mission and made an emergency landing in Cyprus. It was later abandoned in Egypt and was taken on strength by the 566th Bomb Squadron, 389th Bomb Group, and flew regular combat missions with that unit, at least 46 by pictorial evidence. It was declared war-weary and transferred to the 467th Bomb Group on March 26, 1944, and turned into an assembly ship. This aircraft was painted with large yellow polka dots with red trim. There was a large white P on the fuselage that was lit to aid in visibility. Now, it was damaged on October 27, 1944 during a landing accident and was written off. B-24H 4129393 Shoo Shoo Baby was acquired after battle damage, and the nose was replaced with a standard D-style nose, and the aircraft was painted in an identical scheme as Pete the Palm Inspector and, not surprisingly, was named Pete the Palm Inspector II. Next up, B-24D 4123683 Green Dragon. It began life with the 93rd Bomb Group as JoJo's special delivery, and as we have seen many times before, took part in the raid on Palesti in August of 1943. It returned to England and was declared war-weary before moving over to the 389th Bomb Group and being used as an assembly ship. It was painted in yellow and green stripes and named Green Dragon. It was flown until July 25th of 1944 when it was written off after a landing gear failure while taxiing. It was replaced by B-24J 4299972 and was named Green Dragon II. This replacement aircraft had a much more complicated paint scheme of an interconnecting yellow and green zigzag, and was later painted with a shark mouth similar to what you've seen on some previous aircraft. So this aircraft survived the war and surprisingly was returned to the US before being scrapped along with thousands of other war-weary aircraft in the immediate post-war years. So next up is B-24D 4123737 Fearless Freddie. It began life with the 328th Bomb Squadron, 93rd Bomb Group, named Eager Beaver, and may have flown on the Palesti raid, although info is sketchy on that one. It was flown back to England, declared war-weary, and transferred to the 446th Bomb Group, where it became an assembly ship. It was painted overall red with yellow tails and named Fearless Freddie. Now, it was involved in a landing accident in October of 1944 and was retired. It was replaced by B-24H-427654 pistol packing Bomba, but I can't find any pictures of this aircraft as an assembly ship, but it was recorded to have been also called Fearless Freddie. So this now takes us to the end of the assembly ships. Now, I by no means claim this is covering every assembly ship that's out there. This is just the ones that I have been able to find records of online. Now, if anybody has any other pictures of what they think are assembly ships, by all means, post them down below in the comments section, and I will do my best to look into them and post another video on some more of these if they come up. So on that note, thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time.
Thank you for watching, guys, and as always, if you are interested in any of the content you see, you can access my website at www.shawns-aviation.com. You can see all the latest pictures of aircraft and museums and the build logs of all of my current models and past models on that site. And if you're interested in any of this content, please click the subscribe button here on YouTube to follow more. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time.